Morning, everyone. Buenos dias a todos nuestros amables oyentes. Guten Morgen. Welcome, everyone, to Movers and Shakers Unlimited as we begin to explore strange new worlds. My name is Chris Pabon, and I am here with my co-host, who is currently in the lovely state of Maine, Josh Pritchett. Morning, Josh.
In the alpha
Josh, you're
Writer.
cutting in and out a little bit.
Oh, okay, wait.
Okay, that's better.
Okay, this is Josh Pritchett, lead organizer for the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group, film critic and writer. Chris, how are you doing this week?
Well, Josh, my hand is shaking still a little bit because I'm having the AwesomeCon withdrawals. Big shout out to everyone who was there at AwesomeCon last weekend. It was a great con, and shameless plug for the next great con that we'll have next month, which is with our friends at Shore Leave in Hunt Valley, Maryland.
Yes, I am definitely looking forward to that. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, I do have a table that I will be signing autographs of my my new book, Bigfoot and Other Tales of the Supernatural, will be available there. And I'm looking forward to seeing or if you just want to come up and ask us questions about the show, I'm available for that too. So, Chris, we will be doing the show from there, won't we?
We will.
Yes.
And it will be a great show. And
Yes.
Speaking of great shows, we have a little later on for all of you who are watching a great guest who will be joining us. Someone who is very familiar to people who read about Star Trek. So, drum roll, stay with us and you'll find out who that person is. But in the meanwhile, we have a show to go over. And I thought the show, Josh, overall was a little on the dark side. And as we recap the show for our guests watching, and shout out to my friend and friend of the show, Michael Pea out in Colorado.
Hi, Michael. Good morning.
We will dive into why it's a little bit on the dark side, but we start off light enough. It seems to be just a simple mission for Enterprise. They are in the Magellan system just to do some simple stellar cartography. And as we have with each episode, it begins with an intro from a different character that the show is going to focus on, this time being Captain Pike. And he reminisces about how he was here years ago, albeit as a lieutenant under the command of Robert April, and almost died because of a pulsar. And he says, when you tend to die almost die from a pulsar, you kind of remember that. And what seems to be a simple mission suddenly gets complicated when they witness a larger ship firing on a smaller ship. And in a shout out to Enterprise, instead of using a tractor beam, this ship is using some type of magnetic grappler hooks to hook onto the ship to bring it in, because while they can travel, they don't have tractor beam technology yet. So they're trying to physically reel it in. And then the ship fires on Enterprise when they try to intervene, which causes a small incident because Lieutenant Uhura now is on her rotation. As we've seen throughout the season, she's gone through engineering, for example, and worked with Hemmer. And now she's working with Lieutenant Son on security, which is kind of alluded to is not an easy gig. And she is put in charge of seeing if she can incapacitate the ship with a small burst of phaser fire. But the ship moves, and she actually ends up hitting the ship and damaging it to the point that it's going to crash into the moon that's underneath them. But they do manage to rescue the people on the ship that they were attacking. And Pike and Number One go to transporter room on deck 6. So now we know where the transporter room is. And it turns out to be someone Captain Pike knows. Her name is Alora, and it's clearly implied that he is a former love interest of Captain Pike, and he is surprised. They both are surprised to see each other once again, and she refers to him as Lieutenant, and he has trouble. He gets a little tongue-tied trying to introduce Number One to her. but she's not the only one there. There is someone we will become to know who's the first servant and his doctor who doubles for his dad. And this is quite a unique child because we go to a sick bay and Dr. Mabenga discovers that he has several um, implants in him. He's highly intelligent, and we get introduced to quantum level medicine, which makes Dr. Mabenga think maybe this is something I could use for my daughter because prior to them arriving in sick bay, he is talking to his daughter, and you see her saying, "Dad, you just read me like this like 5 different times," and he explains because of the time lag of being in the transporter. For her, no time passes when she's in the transporter buffer, but for him, several days passes. So it's both painful for him, and also sometimes he just like misses where he left off in the story that he's telling her. Um, but the examination of the child does bring him some hope that maybe this is something. This is the key to the discovery I need for my daughter. And later, the scene shifts to the ready room where clearly Captain Pike is still enamored of Laura, and he agrees to take them back to the planet. And we are introduced to the motto of science, service, and sacrifice. That is the motto of the planet, and she insists that the firstborn has to get there. She is a little remiss when she hears that they're going to investigate the wreckage of the ship that was attacking them, but Pike and Una and Spock say that it's the policy of the Federation that if you're fired upon, they're going to investigate the ship that fired on them. And she insists, well, then I'm going to go with you. They don't find any bodies, but Spock finds a device that later we will come to learn that it's a neural inhibitor. And then they go off to the planet, and the planet is beautiful, and it's very reminiscent of Stratos. Some of you remember from the original series, and it's a lovely planet. It just looks beautiful. It's just cities in the sky, and Captain Pike beams down with her, and they go see the guards because in the wreckage, and in addition to what we will come to learn is the neural inhibitor, she identifies a chip, and it's a service chip that is given to like the elite guard assigned to protect the first servant. And Josh, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah. So they call the elite guards together into formation and order them to display their medallions, thinking that the person who is missing a medallion is probably the lead suspect. One of the guards displays a medallion that is damaged. He claims at first that it was damaged by an accident. When Alora attempts to question him about it, he grabs her, tries to take her hostage, and then makes an attempt to try to escape. Pike captures him, and the guard then decides to commit suicide or die fighting, and Pike is, and Alora go back to her quarters, and and ultimately, Lieutenant Noonien Singh and Cadet Uhura continue their investigations, and it basically then Pike tells Alora that he knows his future. He saw a vision of what's to come for him, and Alora offers him an opportunity that maybe he could just stay on Majalis. And Pike is kind of considering it, and then she invites him to come to the ceremony where they will see the young boy placed in the as the new first in this society. But before that, the father who is Gamal, the doctor, who attempts to take the child off the Enterprise. But suddenly, he's in the transport room. He's demanding that the chief beam them down. And when he won't do that, and Pike tries to talk them down, Suddenly, Gamal and his son are beamed off the transporter pads, and they realize that another ship has just abducted them. Um, they quickly capture the ship and manage to get um, Gamal back. But it seems as though when the other ship blows up, that's it. The first citizen has disappeared. Alora is very upset, but thanks to Spock, Pike is able to find the first child in a cargo container on the Enterprise. So Gamal is taken into custody. The child is returned to Majalis. Pike is going to the ceremony, and as he is going to the ceremony, uh, Gamal is revealing to Dr. Mbenga and Spock why he was trying to take his son away. And Pike sees to his horror that the previous first child uh, is being removed, as his dead body is being removed, and he finds out that the only way that, for some reason, that Magellan's society can function is it needs the brain power of a selected child. And so the child's placed in his chair. Pike tries to fight the guards off, but he is subdued, and the kid is integrated in the system and cannot be removed until after he has died. Um, Alora tries to explain, well, doesn't your society have children that suffer? If we didn't do this, everyone would suffer. But in this society, only one child suffers, and we honor his suffering. And Pike leaves. Gamal asked to be taken to the colony that was trying to help him take his son away. Even though it's not a very hospitable planet, he feels it would be better than Magellan, where he is obviously no longer welcome. But before he leaves, he shares some of his research with Mbenga in the hopes that this will help him find a way to help his daughter down the road. So, and then Pike is just kind of left in his quarters alone and looking out at the stars. And that's pretty much, I think, where the episode comes to an end. So, Chris?
So there is a lot of undertones about this episode, especially considering the usage of a child. And I'll just add that there is a very disturbing scene at the end where the previous occupant of the chair that they're about to put the first servant in is removed, and um, it looks like he has been completely drained of life. And later on, when Pike is in the quarters for Laura after he's been removed, knocked unconscious when he's trying to avoid the new first servant being plugged in, he asks, "Will he suffer?" And I thought the reply was great because he doesn't mince any words. He says, "Yes, he will." And I love that the writers did this because it would have been easy to just say like, "No, he'll be okay." But as Michael is just referring to the chat right now, the horror of it is so great. But I think this is the part where we should go into discussing that amongst a segment of the good, the bad, and the Gorn, and introduce our very special guest. For those of you who are out there watching, Star Trek author John Michael Friedman is with us this morning. Good morning.
Hey guys, how you
Good
doing?
morning, Mike.
We
How's
are
it
very
going?
we are very happy that you're here with us this morning.
Going well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
Yes.
happy to be here.
We've been really hoping you could join us for a while now. For those of you who have been living under a rock for, I don't know, 30 some odd years, Mike has not only written the book about Jean-Luc Picard, he's written several books about Jean-Luc, as well as Captain Kirk, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and of course he was the author of the Star Trek The Next Generation comic book series back in the early 90s, which I think I have every issue of, Mike. It was a great comic book. Yes.
Thank you.
So Michael, what are some of the good things you took away from this episode?
Well, first of all, Anson Mount is just incredible as Pike. He is, he's worth the price of admission all by himself. he's he's Pike is sort of got this casual demeanor that doesn't seem to take away from his presence as a command officer, and Mount just captures that perfectly. He with a little expression, he really conveys a lot. So I'm very impressed with him in this series. Um, I also like the ensemble. I think it's it's fun, it's interesting. There are some ironies, like when we see number one talking to Nurse Chapel. That's always interesting because it's the same actress that created both roles. So so I like that. And and Strange New Worlds in general, it's like comfort food, isn't it? We're we're brought back to the best parts of the original series. So I really like that. And the science fiction concept of an exceptional person taking on that burden for the sake of society. I mean, that's interesting. It's something I've thought of on my own as well. So there's a lot to love about this. Also, I mean, the production values are incredible. When you look at the floating elements of Alora's civilization, that's great as well. And Uhura's trip through the various departments on the ship is also interesting. There's a lot to love about this, which is not to say I love everything, but I do certainly love a lot about it.
Um, I think this was I agree. Anson Mount is an incredible actor. I mean, if you ever saw him on the TV series he did prior to this, Hell on Wheels, you could tell he was just something amazing. Um, he's a very confident actor, um, and I mean, Star Trek has been blessed for 55 years almost with having great actors, whether it was Leonard Nimoy, Patrick Stewart, William Shatner, Avery Brooks, Kate Mulgrew. Uh, but I mean, he really does knock it out of the park. I mean, it makes it a joy to tune into the show each week and get to see Captain Pike. Um, and I think we only have four more episodes this season. I think we're going to be going through some serious withdrawals. I may
Yeah.
have to rewatch the whole show when it's all over. But I thought with this particular one, I'm enjoying Uhura's journey, like you said, Mike, with her going from department to department each week and learning how to do different things, and her being mentored by each crew member, first with Spock and then with Hammer and now with uh, Lennon. I
Mhm.
think is really, really doing great, and it's keeping her very much an active part of the whole series. So,
Yeah, I think this is like Star Trek's penance. They uh, Michelle Nichols, all she really got to do, for the most part, was hail other ships and
Channels open.
yeah, all right. But although she actually did do more than that, and the fact that she even did that in the context of the '60s is remarkable. But excuse me, I think what they're trying to do here is go so far in the other direction that there's no question this is not we're not making a mistake with Uhura this time. We're going to show that she's capable of doing anything,
yeah.
and she's in fact a command officer, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. It's not forced. It's well done.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think that one of the aspects of the good, which the following may seem to be contradictory, but it was the horror element that we saw in this episode that was really well done. And I thought that the series as a whole is doing horror actually quite well because the Gorn episode also had a lot of elements of horror in it. The whole idea of the first servant being plugged into that computer and the notion that um, if you're a kid that has never known suffering, would you be able to understand the concept of what suffering is when they explain it to you? Like, and you'll be revered by all the people and then plugged into this machine. Can you actually understand it until the moment that you're there and you're about to be plugged in, and you can see the look of horror on his face as he realizes, oh, this is something completely beyond what I was expecting, because he has no frame of reference to understand what suffering is. And it and they pull no punches, as I mentioned before, when they say, like, yes, he will suffer, and just the whole visual of the previous first servant being pulled away as a withered husk, when it looks like he's a battery that's been completely drained of life and clearly has suffered, because you see, he's kind of been contorted. It's just they pulled no punches, and I thought that part was really brilliant, as well as the whole concept, once again, of science, service, and sacrifice, and the dilemma that were presented, that Pike is outraged, but yet he really can't do anything because, as it's pointed out, they're not a member of the Federation. Like, he can't come down there with the security team and try to free the child, because it's outside of his jurisdiction. So he has to just basically, like, not like it, take it, and go back up to the ship. And I also liked within this was well, we're not sure why the people who created the system decided to use a child, but even though we don't understand why, we're going to keep on doing it. I thought was a a good comparison to the moment that we're having right now in several aspects of our country, including gun control. That we seem to be locked in this, like, this is the way we've done it, so we're just going to keep on doing it. So, from horror to, like, to the time we're living now, I thought the writers did an exceptional job about not pulling punches in this episode.
Yeah, I think, Chris, this episode was about as subtle as a baseball bat to the head. We not just with gun control, but in the military. How many young men and women have we asked to sacrifice their lives before their lives have really begun over the last 20 some years to fight in Afghanistan and Iraq and other theaters of war? Because of, to protect our country, but more than that, yeah, you mentioned gun control. What's more important, this guy's Second Amendment rights or this group of children's lives? But also, in this country, we have, in around the world, we have startling amounts of poverty, and we're supposed to be so rich, and yet how many millions of children in this country or in other countries are just living with hunger and poverty, while a certain number of people, get annoyed when they have to miss lunch or something.
I mean, very true. I mean, and she raises the question of, like, okay, we center the sacrifice on one individual and we applaud and recognize their sacrifice, even though, again, I don't think the individual quite realizes what they're doing. And she questions Pike of, well, how many people in your federation have a blind eye turned to them, even though they're sacrificing themselves. So I think that was great. And to echo something that Michael just put into the chat, also, again, going back to the horror element, it was the horror in Pike realizing, holy crap, I brought this child back to them. Like I had the opportunity to not do this. And, like, in thinking I was doing something good, I ended up doing something, for me personally, very bad.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I'm old enough to have been compelled to participate in the lottery for the draft for Vietnam. And while I was never actually drafted, when I turned 18, they were still picking numbers, and I can tell you, my number was 2. So had there been a draft, I certainly would have been drafted. And the idea of sacrificing your young was much more was much stronger in those days, because we had no choice. And the whole civil rights movement, it's not very commonly known, but Martin Luther King was also an opponent of the Vietnam War. He wrote about that extensively, and so it's sort of the episode did sort of bring back that era for me. Also, it's a different take on the Federation. She said, "Don't you?" Alora said, "Don't you sacrifice your young as well in a way?" Allowing people to take advantage of your society at the expense of children, and that's not something we've really seen in Star Trek a lot, right? The idea that there were inequities in society. We've seen other criticisms of Federation societies, but not really that one.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty strange line too, Mike. I thought that, okay, we've been told that, okay, by this point, Earth has basically eliminated poverty and other maladjustments. But another thing, let's and I was going to bring this up because this has long been on my mind. Two episodes from both the original series and the Next Generation, Conscience of the King, and I'm blanking on the name of it now, but the episode from season, what was it, 6 maybe, when, or maybe no, maybe it was season 4, when they met Tasha's sister and they
Hmm.
went back to Tasha's the colony. Yes, some colonies in the Federation fail,
Hmm.
and some colonies don't get the priorities that others do. Okay, so like with what happened in Conscience of the King, that was a colony that had failed. The release ship didn't come with the supplies, and
Right.
so the governor of that colony
Yeah.
did this whole thing where he basically started making decisions who was going to live and who was going to die.
Yeah.
And obviously, something we were never clear about would happen on Tasha's colony. That colony failed. The government collapsed. Everybody lives in anarchy, and it's ruled by a series of different gangs. So, yeah, obviously, Earth, Mars, Titan at this point, and a number of other Federation worlds are doing very, very well. But there's some colonies that, for whatever reason, are not doing as well and end up just, you know, suffering.
Mhm.
So we don't really know that. Maybe they'll get more into that as the series progresses. I'd like to know more about that. That's definitely very interesting. Chris?
Well, I was going to segue into the bad of this episode, and I want to bring up Anson Mont's hair. Um, I think there is a growing and prosperous civilization underneath that hair because it seems to continue to grow with each episode. At some point, I think it's going to break off and try to take over the Enterprise. It's like, oh my gosh, like we have to bring this amazing coif of hair under control.
There's a very what could I say? A very uncomplimentary comparison to a scene in what is it? Something About Mary,
Oh yes.
right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into detail, but it reminds me of that. Um, so yeah. It does seem like his hair is a little much, but
Yeah.
more importantly, if there's a bad about this, I think it's the extent to which they replicated the cloud minders from the original series. There's a city in the sky, and it only exists at the expense of a part of their civilization. Not one kid, but a class of people in their civilization. Without them, they couldn't have this ethereal city. So there's a lot of common threads there. Shatner, of course, or Kirk is involved with an Alora type character, um, but it's a little different. But it strikes me that with all the possible stories you could tell, you could probably, if you wanted to, avoid telling that one.
Yeah, I think that this is sort of where you're kind of delving into the old silent science fiction film Metropolis. That had the same theme of,
Mhm.
okay, you had one group of people living very, very well, and then another group that worked hard to keep those that were living well afloat. And yeah, I actually, Mike, I almost thought Magellan was the same planet as the one you were talking about, the cloud miners. That kind of confused me. I thought, is that the same planet? Because I think, I mean, it's very possible that you'd have two species that were similar and develop similar technologies that would have these floating cities. That it wouldn't be impossible in a galaxy as big as ours. You could have had multiple cultures decide to develop that kind of technology. I mean, we did see in Voyager there was a civilization that lived beneath an ocean, on a predominantly oceanic planet. So,
But you would think, and they run into this at different points in the series, which I still think it's a wonderful series, but they do run into these things like if Kirk shows up and he's on a planet with a floating city essentially, would he not know about Pike's experience with a floating city? Would he not say, gee, I wonder if this is all happening at the expense of someone? Because that's what happened, with Pike's experience. Wouldn't you think that he would be aware of that and maybe suspect that early on? There's a lot of stuff that goes on in Strange New Worlds that kind of throws what's been established in other series askew. Not to the point, for instance, that Enterprise did. Enterprise just went to hell with themselves. But there are little things that take place. Spock into Pring, for instance. Little things that take place that make you wonder how it fits with the established continuity.
Well, my justification for this would be like it was probably in the memo, and Kirk never bothered to like read the memo.
yeah, I do think that. Well, I mean, given the fact that, and I'm just going to say this, all due respect to William Shatner and the Kirk fans, it just seemed like to me Kirk did not really look into like a lot of the personnel records of the people that be in. He didn't really mire himself in the minutia of things like, oh, I didn't realize that my first officer's father is the Vulcan ambassador to the Federation.
Yeah,
Even though I knew
right.
his biological mother is human, and there were not a whole lot of
Yeah.
interracial marriages like that at that point. So why Kirk couldn't put two and two together on that, I never knew. I mean, and of course, we never knew why Spock's parents didn't come to his wedding in the episode The Amok Time. Of course, we found out later that was because Sarek never approved of Spock's joining Starfleet, and the two did not speak for decades after that.
Kirk, fighter, definitely yes. Kirk, leader, yes. Kirk, reader, probably a bit
Well,
less
he
so.
read a lot of Shakespeare, apparently. He liked to read Shakespeare
Yeah.
and poetry, but crew, basic crew information, not so much.
He delegated that. So, so the other bad thing about this is I will point out security on the Enterprise. I mean, I understand that the first servant is a genius, but he just manages to waltz in and break whatever security locks they have and rematerialize Dr. Mabengo's daughter. Um, and then we see that the Doctor himself manages to like attempt to fake a beam out of himself and the first servant. This would not have happened on Worf's Enterprise. I think Lieutenant San needs to have like a review because security just seems to be falling a little lax in some aspects on the Enterprise.
Yeah, I think that stems from Pike, right? Doesn't it? Doesn't it strike you that that's okay with him? Like people are playing Enterprise bingo
Bingo.
and and so on. And but he seems to be okay with it. If he, I think if he wanted to clamp down on it, I'm sure that that would happen. But he seems pretty casual about that. And when you're in a leadership position, you kind of have to make that choice. Are you going to how much leeway are you going to give people? If you give them none, then they're not going to respond. And if you give them too much, then things don't happen the way they need to. So it's always what Michael's saying. Security, what's that?
Clearly.
It's interesting. It's right. Um, but
Thank
but
you,
anyway, I
Michael.
think I think security protocols come down from the captain. How tight are we going to be about this?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that definitely, because I have some friends who, because as most of you all know, Worf is my favorite character, and people always give me grief about how, I mean, all these security lapses on the Enterprise D when Worf was in charge of security, and I think that
According to Odo.
according to Odo, yes. Oh, yeah. Thank you for reminding me, Chris. That yeah, you do have slip ups. No security system in either a democracy or a dictatorship is going to work perfectly at doing its goals. Um, Obviously, in a dictatorship, we hope it never works perfectly. But in a democracy, yes, we do need to, do things to keep people and property safe. But that said, I think there are times that Pike has felt with some people he's had to kind of come down hard on them. And then there are times that Pike has just been like, okay, uh, when the helmsperson decides, is a little bit, doesn't always follow Starfleet officer protocol and say "I, sir" and all this other stuff. He just kind of like, yeah, let it go. She's doing a great job, and I don't really care
I'll
about that
tell
other
you,
stuff. Yeah,
I think that's the thing that bothers me the most about the whole series is that he's got this helm officer at Ortegas, and he says, "Come on, let's do that." And she goes, "Are you sure you want to do that, Captain?" Because where would that ever happen in any chain of command? I'm not such a stickler for military protocols, but that seems to me to be crazy. I want you to do that. Okay, it's your ship. I don't know. I don't know if it's a great idea. I think that's taking that characterization much too far. It's okay to be antic in your private life, when you're on shore leave or when you're in, when it's your downtime. That's great. But in the middle of a military encounter, you do you want your helm officer suggesting that you don't know what you're talking about? Crazy.
well, yeah, but I think it's, I mean, how many times did Kirk just tolerate McCoy and Spock's banter, but then again, he on the bridge in front of all the other officers. That was that just got to be kind of a thing. And in a realistic military setting or paramilitary setting, that might not be acceptable. Uh, but this is still television. This is still entertainment. This is a show, and they were all going back. Yes, sir. I, sir. Doing that, it would be kind of dull and might feel like another sci-fi show that I kind of give a lot of grief to, and I won't tell you what it is. Uh,
Now I'm
Michael,
curious.
Michael saying bad writing. No, I don't think it's bad writing. I like Ortega's character. I like a little bit of the banter. I mean, Janeway was willing to tolerate a little bit of banter with Paris when he was at the helm. Um, I think it also has to do with the particular personalities of characters. I mean, I think certainly Kirk and Picard were a little bit more stoic at times than, say, Janeway or Pike. um, or Burnham, or But I think that at the same time, I don't really begrudge it. I think this actress really has that kind of personality that it's like, okay, we got to make this. I mean, that she is a bit irreverent, and I like that. And eh,
I would say more than a bit, but that's okay.
yeah.
That's
I
Th-
okay.
th-
mean,
this is a
sorry.
good no, this is a good segue into the Gorn part of our episode. And so one thing I wanted to bring up is, holy cow, we had a Samuel Kirk sighting. How long has it been? Even though it was only brief, he's like a comet. He passes briefly through the episode.
Yes.
And we also, I'm going to notice for the second episode in a row, we didn't see Hemmer.
Yeah, we didn't see Hammer, and which is a pity because I like Hammer, um, I like the fact. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing more of this Kirk, but um, I love that they had this Kirk, that they have this guy in the series. It's just so funny that they have this guy. And you know something? It was not in this episode, but in one of the episodes, like it may be the first one, they talked about his mustache and Pike having a mustache. There was a Star Trek annual that I wrote for DC, and it was a Pike story, Pike and Spock story, and partway through the process, DC realized and Paramount realized we didn't have likeness rights for the Pike character, so we had to. So Jeffrey Hunter had never signed such a contract because who thought there was
Yeah.
going to be a comic with Jeffrey Hunter in it. So they had to disguise him, and they put a mustache on him. And I wonder if that mustache discussion was a reference to that comic.
I just wanted to kind of throw this out. What I thought, Mike. I don't think you're wrong. But we were kind of talking about this after the episode aired, and I thought more or less that the mustache reference had to do with the fact that in the episode where we kind of met Sam Kirk, we met his dead body.
Right.
The episode with the flying um,
Yeah.
jellyfish.
Operation Annihilate.
Yeah, Operation Annihilation. Thank you. We see him, Sam Kirk, lying on the ground, and it's just William Shatner with a mustache.
Right. Right.
So that's what I
Yeah.
thought it was a joke about. Somebody thought about that and threw that out there. Thank you for joining us today, Nathan. It's good to see you.
So the other thing on our Gorn section is like hopscotch is still a thing in the many years from now.
I'm sorry. What is
Hopscotch is still a thing.
hopscotch? Oh, hopscotch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an eternal. It's been around since I believe it's been around since the Black Plague. So I don't think it's one of those games that kids played that I'm sure has a very dark and horrible origin that one of us is going to find out about this week and talk about it. But
Right. Yeah. Right.
like Ring Around the Rosies and London Bridge is falling down.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, the other aspect of the Gorn would be that I also liked how, even though Non is a stickler for rules and regulations, but you get to see that in order to attempt to secure things, he's willing to break the rules once he gives the what he took illicitly from the damaged ship and tells Uhura, okay, I want you to take a look at this and translate, and then says, listen, this is your work, it's not mine, I want you to tell the captain. So she has different facets. I like that.
Yeah. But again, it all stems from Pike. He has this, the rules are great until they get in the way. And I like that. You know, it's a refreshing way of looking at things. Even the Prime Directive, he seems perfectly willing, right? Perfectly willing to break if it um, if it's in the service of something that he thinks is more important.
Yeah, that is definitely a hallmark of all of the Star Trek captains we've seen to this point, is that obviously they would never consider giving um, phasers to an underdeveloped civilization, but obviously the Magellans are a developed civilization. They do have warp capability. Um, they do have a functioning society, and the fact that they are using child labor to support themselves, that's just morally wrong. If someone has to interfere, and not this child, and um,
but but
yeah,
but but again, it's great to see like we believe that is wrong, but then you view the other viewpoint of them, like they're okay with it. I mean, they've accepted it. So it's like which civilization's viewpoint is the correct one? It's a great question. I think that is raised in the episode.
yeah,
Mm.
I it is a great viewpoint, but I think obviously, I'm not sure how much of this Pike is actually going to wrestle with, or he's just going to decide, well, I mean, obviously there's been a non-interference directive since the time of Captain Archer, because he talked about having something like that
Yeah, yeah. It
in
was called,
Enterprise.
yeah, it was called something else, but it wasn't the prime directive. It was non-interference. But
Yeah,
don't let's not forget that this society um, is not monolithic in its approval of what's going on. You have an entire colony of dissidents uh, who who are not in favor of what of essentially enslaving a child for their life, for the rest of their life. So if he's interfering, he would at least meet with the approval of part of that society.
Yes, true.
Which is
yeah,
good. Which is good. When you think about it, it's true. You can't, portraying a society as monolithic is just naive.
yeah.
My Go
Sorry, go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, no, it's going. Before we go into the um, okay, what comes next? I do want to raise for the both of you, like the question of when they couldn't raise the captain, they couldn't beam in. I mean, why didn't they send someone in a shuttle? Like, was the shuttle like was this their maintenance time? I mean, like, why not use the shuttle to take someone down to try to find him?
Yeah, why not?
Good point. Yeah.
You know, clearly, there are always. It's not an excuse, but there are always things that can be done that they might not do because we get in the way of the plot. Again, that's not an excuse. It's just the way it works.
Josh, you wanted to say something before we go into the segment of what we think is coming.
I was just going to add that with the shuttle, they did say they threw up some sort of shield of some time. Maybe the shuttle couldn't get through that either. But yeah, it's that shuttle usage definitely seems to be very selective
Yes.
at times. So more so now, I think, than on TNG, because I think they were more willing to use it, like in the episode Darmok. When they couldn't beam the captain back, Riker sent Worf and a security team in a shuttle to head down, but of course, they got shot at. So but yeah, no, I think, I think overall a good episode, very very kind of dark episode. But at any rate, let's move on to predictions. What we think is coming up, Chris.
I will lend the floor to our guests because our guests should always go first.
Well,
Yes,
thanks.
sorry,
Thanks a
Michael.
lot. Thanks a lot. Now I have to think. Where do I think it's going? I think we'll see more of more what I call comfort food. More of the type of thing that seems reminiscent in some way of the original series. Um, and I hope that's what happens. trying to think. We'll see more Uhura going through, department by department. Can't wait till she gets to like, stellar cartography. But I think she'll do that. I don't, it's funny because at various points in my career, I actually did know what was coming, and now I don't. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it, like as if I were going to a convention incognito, and just enjoying it like another fan. I'm really looking forward to that. So basically, what I'm saying is I have no idea.
Yeah. Before I make my predictions, I just want to say something Michael said in the chat room. Monolithic societies are scary. Yes, they are. Very much so. Well, as far as predictions go, well, obviously, of course, I keep saying this week after week, I think we are going to see more of things like the Gorn and the Klingons, which I'm excited about. I would not mind if in an episode we saw that colony, the Magellan colony that is not living so idealistically, and maybe find out more about them. That would be kind of cool. I also think maybe T'Pring will come back, make another appearance. I did see a clip from next week's episode, but I'm not going to really go into spoilers on that. It's up on YouTube. But definitely, want to look forward to that. Chris?
Well, Joss, I'm going to have to be on the other side of the table with you on. I think we will see something Gorn related, but again, I'm standing firm, planting my flag that we are not going to see Klingons this first season. Secondly, we will see a Hammer centric episode because again, throughout the model of the season, it seems to be focusing on a different character on the ship. Hence, like the log entry, and so we still haven't done Hammer. We still haven't done Ortega's. Like if we had to choose one, I think it's definitely going to be we'll see a Hammer centric episode. I think that we're going to see more of Dr. Mabenga's daughter. I think we'll see a follow up or at least one attempt to cure her using the basics of the quantum principles that the chosen one's father told Mabenga. We'll see some of that, and given the fact that they have already filmed or are filming season 2, I think we may see a cliffhanger at the end of season 1.
Well, that all sounds reasonable, actually. What I hope we don't see, honestly, is more of things like the Gorn. The Gorn were established as something else in the original series. They didn't eat people. Had they had that history, I don't see Kirk having that rapprochement with the Gorn warrior that he confronted. There are some things that are just intolerable. You just don't. It's nice to be able to come together to find common ground with an alien species, but there are some things that are just unacceptable, and you just don't come to a common ground with some things. And eating people is one of them. So by establishing that the Gorn do this kind of thing, they've really conflicted, putting themselves in conflict with the original series. Enterprise was guilty of that a lot. They had a Ferengi episode when they never should have been in contact with the Ferengi yet. So I hope they resist the urge to bump up against the established elements of the timeline and just tell good stories on their own.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, Mike. Because obviously, in the original Gorn episode from the original series, it was shown as more like they had a misunderstanding and that the Gorn attacked the Federation outpost because they didn't realize this was supposed to be a Gorn planet, and the Gorn had a real grievance, and Kirk was finally towards the end able to see maybe we need to sit down and have a conversation instead of trying to kill each other. and escalate this thing. So, um,
Well, if Kirk knew that they ate people, I definitely think he would not have starred in a Geico commercial years later with the Gorn.
Right?
yeah, that's true. So, well, now we're pretty much, I think, to the end of the episode. And Michael, would you like to let people know where to find you and what you got in the fire now?
Sure. Well, you can find me at michaeljanfriedman.net, crazy8press.com, which is a group of independent writers that I'm part of, sort of a consortium. And we have like 60 books, 65 books in inventory at Crazy 8 Press. So definitely check that out. Also, I'm in the midst of a Kickstarter, a knockdown, drag out Kickstarter campaign for a book called Phenomenon's Season of Darkness, which is the second volume in a shared world superhero anthology that I'm very proud of. We have tremendous writers, writers from television and movies and comics and Nebula and Hugo award winners and just about just an incredible array of writers, and each one has a superhero that they've come up with, and that they're going to write the arc of. We have everything from a super speedster that where you say, "Wow, we've seen super speedsters before, but you've never seen our super speedster as written by Paul Kupperberg." Very different. And then we have completely off the wall characters like Lipstick Lily, who fights crime with an array of specialty lipsticks. Okay, and Mary Fan, our friend, has a character called Sarcastic Fringehead. We've also never seen that. So it's superheroes. It's a whole new take on superheroes, um, and I strongly, desperately urge everybody to check it out. It's a Kickstarter campaign for Phenomenon's Season of Darkness. Okay, and I'll tell you, as of right now, at 12:37 on Sunday, um, the campaign only goes for another 8 hours and change. So please, if you're listening, check it out.
Yeah, and we'll get our producers to post a link to that on the channel here today. Um, please do support that. It's an awesome project. I know many of the writers. I know Mike's work, Mary's work, and a lot of the other writers who are involved. Uh, and it's going to be something special. You're going to really enjoy it. And for those of you coming to Shore Leave in a few weeks, it'd be a great time to get a copy of this and get them to sign it for you. I don't know if it'll be ready by Shore Leave, Mike.
Yes.
If everything goes well, it will be.
The first volume will be ready for shore leave. The second volume won't be ready for several months.
Okay. Well, that's, it's something to look forward to. So please help this worthy cause out. I know things are tight for a lot of people, but you can, this is something really special. Please help out today. So, Chris.
Thank you, Josh. You can find me on Instagram at Verde Cosplay, and if you are at AwesomeCon, please go see if you're one of the many people that I took pictures of, and I'm featuring the cosplay. I have been featuring the cosplay of quite a few people, and there's still quite a few people more because newsflash, I took a lot of pictures of some high quality cosplay. Come on down and tag yourself if you see yourself there.
And as always, you can find me at Josh Pritchett Jr. on Facebook and also at the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group. If you're in the Northern Virginia or Southern Maryland area and you love Star Trek, please consider joining our group. We're just a bunch of really wonderful folks who love getting together and talking all things Star Trek, along with a little bit of Star Wars, DC, Doctor Who, Marvel, anything sci-fi, fantasy, and a little bit of horror related. And of course, my book, Bigfoot and Other Tales of the Supernatural, is available on Amazon and Kindle. And I will be appearing this coming Saturday in Stanton, Virginia, at the Virginia Bigfoot Conference at the Stanton at Stanton Convention Center, where I will be signing copies and posters. So if you're going to be in Stanton or on that side of Virginia next week, please come on down. It's like $21 a person. And again, I will be at Shore Leave, where I will be having a table there, and I will be signing copies. Oh, and also, if all goes well, and if you are coming to the Bigfoot conference, I will be giving a free reading right there at my table of one of my stories. So please come by, check it out, say hi. Okay, and on that note, I think we're wrapping up. Once again, we'd like to thank the great Mike Jan Friedman for joining us again today. We hope he'll come back again and join us again in the future.
Absolutely.
And I remain, thank you, sir. And I remain Josh Pritchett.
Yes, and I'm Chris Pabon. Happy 45th birthday to Felix Teo.
Happy birthday, Felix. Sorry I couldn't come to the party, but I will make every effort to come next year. So live long and prosper.
Long life.